All right. There we go. Hello, Internet, if there's anyone there, but we are all live. And we should be getting started.
Yeah. I told my dad, and I was like, maybe I should learn that.
Well, there's a Vanderbilt has a affiliated with it's not very far.
I think so. This is really kind of like, yeah,
I
except
have an excellent set of clubs. I'll pay. But so I thought, some of the activities
leave it alone. You know we need people. Stop. I feel like I haven't done enough. No, I didn't do anything I know. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are so excited to welcome back Jenna Voris and Sasha Peyton Smith for the release of Made of Stars. I am going to be real brief, and then we're going to get to the important thing. But first, I want to say I downloaded this book. I just checked 249 days ago. I read it within 2 days. I've been waiting for so long for this book to come. So Jenna, I'm going to do some quick intros, and then we'll get into why everyone's here. Jenna Voris writes books about ambitious girls and galaxy traversing adventures. She was born and raised in Indiana, where she learned to love roundabouts and the art of college basketball, and now calls DC home, which we are so glad about. When she's not writing, she can be found perfecting her road trip playlists and desperately trying to keep her houseplants alive. Made of Stars is her debut novel. Sasha Peyton Smith is the author of The Witch Haven and The Witch Hunt. Both are also excellent. I also read those in like about a week. And she grew up in the mountains of Utah, surrounded by siblings, books, and one very old cat. She attended the University of Utah and the George Washington University, where she studied biology and public health. She's not a witch, but she does own a lot of crystals, and she knows what phase the moon is in. And a quiz. What phase is the moon in?
Oh, I think we're at a crescent waxing right now. Yeah, don't fact check that, but I think it's getting bigger. We have a new moon in Gemini.
All right, everybody, welcome Jenna and Sasha.
I do have a question. I know. Thank you all so much for being here to celebrate one of my dearest friends, Jenna Voris, on her book birthday. I'm so proud of her. And thank you, as always, to the fabulous staff at One More Page who make these events so fun and so easy. You guys are truly superstars. I am so excited to be here to talk about this book and gush over my fabulously talented friend and have fun with all of you. So thank you for being here on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, right?
To quote Taylor Swift, there's a lot of things you can be doing in DC on a Tuesday night. And we're so glad you're spending it with us. So we can jump right in. I am legally obligated to ask, what inspired this book? Why Made of Stars?
This is gonna happen.
Yes, I have to.
Okay, so for full context, we do have to go back to the year 2012.
Imagine it.
Yeah, imagine it, put yourself there. I was in high school. I was a theater kid in high school, if you couldn't tell. And if you were a theater kid in the year 2012, you kind of, like, by obligation had to be obsessed with Jeremy Jordan. He was everywhere. Yeah, he's amazing. He was in Newsies. He was in Smash. Hashtag bring back Smash. He was in this movie with Dolly Parton. It was like he was everywhere. But before that, he was in the original cast of the Bonnie and Clyde Broadway musical. So as a theater kid, I had like listened to the show. I knew the songs. I knew like the basic history of what was going on. Great, that's important for context. Flash forward a bunch of years. I'm about to go back to grad school. So I'm living in North Carolina, and I'm working at this theater. And I'm in the middle of querying my first very bad book, and I'm not getting any response. Like, no one wants it. And like looking back at it now, I'm like, of course it was not good. But at the time, I was like devastated, right? Like I was like, my life and my career are over. Like this is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And I didn't know much about publishing, but like I knew that people said that you should like work on something else while you were querying to like take your mind off of things. But I didn't really know what else to write. Like I had only written one thing. I had worked on it for like years at this point. So I didn't even know if I could write another book. So I was literally just like vibing, trying to think of like ideas I liked or like tropes I thought were fun. And I was coming home from work one day with like my headphones on, and a song from the Bonnie and Clyde musical came on my little Spotify shuffle. Jeremy Jordan singing about murdering a man in prison. And I was like, that is interesting, right? Like, tell me more about that. I thought it was super fun. And then at the time, I thought I had kind of like discovered a cheat code because I was like, if I write this story, it like kind of already exists. Like there are already characters and like already events that I could work into a plot. So it's like easy. Like I won't even have to do any work.
It's so easy. It was so easy.
It was so easy. I edited
it. Was.
Never edited it. It was so great. No, I obviously spent the next 2 years like rewriting every word. But at the time, I was like, this is a cheat code.
Yeah.
So I literally went home, had my little ideas. The next day, I like started writing it in a little cafe, and here we are. And it's everyone else's problem now.
Do you thank Jeremy Jordan in the acknowledgements?
I do. He is in my book. He has yet to acknowledge me, but maybe one day.
Oh, it's coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, as you said, this is your debut novel. Can you tell us more about the process of writing and publishing this book?
I would love to.
Debuts are notoriously, again, super easy, really smooth.
Yeah, everything went according to plan.
Yeah.
So I wrote this book pretty quickly by like my standards, because the first book that I had written took me years at that point. So I wrote this book in about 3 months. And then when it was time to like find an agent again, I still didn't really know a lot about publishing. I had like one critique partner that I like sent this book to like chapter by chapter when I was writing it. And then I just kind of edited it as best I could myself before sending it out to agents again. So when I started querying again, I had like 6 months of straight form rejections, which is super good for my self-esteem. So I tried to enter this mentorship contest called Pitch Wars, which is specifically for like revisions and pitching to agents. Sasha did the program.
Yeah, I was
in
in
the program.
The Wish Haven was a Pitch Wars book.
Yeah, I got 0 requests. Absolutely nothing. No one wanted it. So I queried the rest of my agent list. No one wants it, which is like super cute. So literally as like a last resort, one of my friends, Serena, had done this other mentorship program, Author Mentor Match, the year before, and was like, why don't you just like try and submit? It would be like super fun. And I was like, well, I really have like nothing to lose, because like what are they gonna do, say no? Like everyone's already doing that. So I submitted to this program, and it was kind of like my like last like thing. I kind of told myself like, if I don't get into this program, it's just like, it's a sign that like this is not the book. I should just give up. It's like totally fine. But I ended up getting in, which was super, super exciting. And at that point, like I think mentorship programs are like pretty hit or miss depending on like a bunch of different factors. But like for me, it was like the best possible thing that could have happened for my book, because I had never had anyone like say yes to my work at that point. Like I didn't have a writing community. I had never had someone like take me like seriously as a writer before and like be excited to like work with like me and like my characters. It was like such an incredible experience, and like I'm so grateful for that and like all of the people that are brought into my life. So I get into that program the second week of March in 2020. And then the second week of March,
realize that. I didn't realize it was that.
Yeah, the second week of March in 2020, something else happened globally. So I like literally get laid off from my job. My classes go online, and I'm like at home alone in my house. All my roommates went home, so I was like alone in my home with nothing else to do but like write this book and like occasionally talk to an exterminator, because we kept getting mice, because like there was no garbage in the alleys. They kept like nibble their way into my home. Yeah, so I literally revised this book like in a pandemic for a few months, and then it was time to query again. And I wasn't like super optimistic, because again, I had just queried my entire list and everyone had told me no. And even though the book had like kind of been revised, like the query and like the first chunk of it was basically the same. So I was like, nobody had requested it so far. But I literally was like, what I lacked in apparent like talent I make up for in being like super annoying. So I just like threw myself back into their inboxes and was like, you're going to read this again. And it worked because like literally I could not have had like a more different experience. Like I sent my query to like the agent I have now, and then like by the end of the week I had an offer. And so I signed with her. We did another round of revisions. I went on sub the fall of that year and then out to editors. And then I had this like really fun couple of months where like a bunch of editors would be like, I love your book, I want to buy it. We would like get on a call, they would like talk me through their revision plan, and then they would like take it to their acquisitions meeting, and like their boss or their marketing team would be like, we're not actually buying YA sci-fi right now. And I'd be like, cool, that feels like something you should have known before you got
got really nice
with
phone
me.
call.
Cool, my bad. So by the time I got on like a call with my editor that I have now, I was like, that's really good, cute that you're like telling me you want to buy my book. I just like simply don't believe you. But she wasn't lying. I guess it worked out. She bought my book, and again, now we are here.
I truly have always said that like pure stubbornness is a more useful skill in writing than talent.
Yeah. Well, I also
Like-
think that's why it's really hard to give like hard and fast query advice, because it's so different for everyone. Like the only thing that was different about my book when I submitted it first versus second, and like I submitted it to the same people. Like my agent ghosted me the first time that I sent it to her. Like the only thing that was different was just timing, and she like happened to be looking for that book when I sent it in again, and that's not something you can control, which is like really annoying for me, someone who wants to control everything.
Yeah, and should be allowed to.
Yeah, I should be able to control it all.
So let's dive into the book. This is like a big, exciting, fast-paced, kind of bombastic sci-fi, but it's so grounded in characters. Can you talk about developing Shane and Ava, whoever Bonnie and Clyde do, and then Cyrus, who's like such an interesting foil.
Yeah.
He's like this like, very lawful character in kind of contrast to Shane and Ava.
Yeah. I do think it was helpful going. Yeah. Who did the crimes there? It was helpful going back to like the cheat code from the beginning, where I felt like I had like historical context and people to pull from, especially at the very beginning. Like for example, like Clyde Barrow in real life was like from a very poor like farming family, did a lot of petty crime in his youth, was like sent to this really terrible Texas prison farm, and then was like very much changed when he got out, and like the version, like the motivations for crimes kind of changed from like providing for his family to like vengeance on the people who put him there, which is like so valid, like go off.
Yeah.
And so like that to me, like when I was researching, I thought that was like really interesting, or like a really interesting place to start for like a character, because you can really see them grow and like live in that place of like anger and denial for like a little bit longer, which like I just think is an interesting emotion to like deal with. So especially for Shane and Ava, who are like the Bonnie and Clyde kind of characters, those I could pull from history and like real life situations to kind of help form the foundations of their character. And then as the drafts went on, they kind of obviously turned into their own characters and their own people, as it became less of like a strict retelling and more of its own story. But Cyrus though is different, obviously, because there's not one specific historical character that he is pulled from. I always knew that there were going to be 3 narrators, like that was always there from the very beginning. I knew that I wanted 3, mostly because I felt like it was kind of a big story. I knew that like there were going to be events happening that like I needed to hear multiple sides from, and then there were also like events that happen in the book where like I needed a 3rd narrator to like tell the story. And for him, the way that I thought was interesting is that I think he and Shane are like very different, but they are like mirror characters in a way where like they start in very similar places, they come from very similar places. They're very different people because of the choices that they make, but like you could see either of them like being in each other's positions. Like Shane like survives the situation by like being angry and like stealing from people and like enacting his vengeance, and like Cyrus survives by like keeping his head down and like following the rules and like trying not to draw attention to himself. But like you could see them being in the other's place if they had just like made different choices, which I think is a really interesting arc to follow because you get the parallel on each side.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the world building. So talk about why Bonnie and Clyde. Why Bonnie and Clyde in space? And then how did you go about developing space? There's a lot of stuff out there. So how do you develop the worlds and the politics and the academy and like your idea of what the environment of Native Stars looks like?
There was never a version of this story that like didn't take place in space. It was always there from the first initial pitch. Like I think I texted it to one of my friends and I was like, I want to write Bonnie and Clyde in space, and instead of robbing banks, they're stealing like fuel and supplies, and instead of like the Great Depression, they're on this planet that's really far from the sun, so it's still hard to grow things. Or like instead of the governor sending the Texas Rangers to chase them across state lines, it's like the leader of this military society who is like desperately trying to cling to power and like protect her own reputation. So like that was all stuff that was there from the very first initial pitch. Like there was never a version of this story that existed anywhere else. I think space is like very big and dramatic and kind of like serves the story well. Like space opera is space opera for a reason. Like a bunch of stuff is happening. And also space is just like interesting. Like it's just there. Like there's so much stuff.
I hate space.
It's
not
terrifying.
but like
It's
the concept
terrifying.
that freaks me out.
Yeah, I think it adds an extra like level of stress because you're like the environment is also trying to kill you. Like these people are trying to kill you, but then also if you step outside, you will also die. So like that's an extra level of like tension and stakes, which I thought was really interesting. And then in terms of like developing the world, I knew that like Ava and Shane's planet needed to feel like 1930s Depression era Texas, which is so weird to say because you're in space, you can literally have anything. But when I was like researching, I watched a lot of like Bonnie and Clyde like movies adaptations just to kind of get a feel, and a lot of them I found like focused on like the crimes and the romance and the robberies, but like the thing that I thought was the most interesting was like the situation that they were like growing up in, because like it's the Great Depression. If you are born in like West Dallas, Texas, during like the 1930s, like you are not like leaving this town. Like you are born here, you are living here, and you are dying here. And like maybe because I'm a Sagittarius, I'm like I hate that. Like that freaks me out. Like that's terrifying. And like I would hate to be in that situation and literally feel like you have no way out. And like that's a very specific kind of feeling that comes from intense economic depression, like no help from the government. So I knew that like Ava and Shane's planet, it's very far from the sun, it's very hard to grow things, and also they needed to still feel like they were like forgotten and abandoned by like their governments and the people that were like supposed to provide for them. And even Cyrus's planet too, even though it has a lot more resources, it's very militarized, it still feels suffocating in its own way, where I needed these characters to feel, even though they're in very different situations, they still needed to feel like they were stuck in their circumstances.
Yeah, that feeling of desolation is like really palpable, and I think it is such an interesting foil to like the Dust Bowl, and then there's vastness and emptiness and nothingness of space.
Yeah,
it's such an interesting like.
Yeah,
you know,
I feel like the
foil.
desert, and then like space, it has like the same energy.
Yes.
You're like, this is scary.
Yeah, too big.
Yeah,
not enough stuff.
Mm-mm.
So speaking of Bonnie and Clyde, what was it like writing a book where both you and the reader knew our main duo were doomed from the start?
Oh my gosh. I'm a big fan of the musical Hadestown, and it's like this Orpheus and Eurydice retelling. Obviously, like Orpheus is like leading Eurydice out of the underworld, and he's like not supposed to look back, but then he does, and like she dies, and like he doesn't. And it's like, oh my god, sad. And like in the musical, literally in like the very first song, like Hermes is the narrator, is like, this is a sad song and this is a tragedy. So the audience knows right off the bat, like we kind of assume you go into this with some kind of knowledge of like basic Greek myth, but if you didn't, like they tell you right at the beginning, it is a sad song. And to me, I think that that's so interesting because that tells me that like that's not a reveal and that's not something that you're keeping from the audience. Like that's something that they know from the beginning. So the challenge there is not like hiding a twist from them. It's like getting them to care for characters that like may or may not have a happy ending, and also just like how you get there. Because I think the getting there is the more interesting part anyway.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting storytelling device. I don't necessarily like care if people are like, here's what's happening at the end, like here's the thing that's going on. Like to me, like the story is like the process of getting there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I guarantee you will still get tagged on like a bunch of really weird Goodreads reviews where it's like, I can't believe they died at the end.
Yeah, right.
You're like, I told you the whole
That's the
time.
whole thing.
Okay, so I'd also like to talk with you about your editorial process. I know Secretly My debut went through so many different versions. There were like 10,000 different versions of the book, and I like tore it apart, and the first draft looks something like the final draft. What was your editorial process like for this book? Were there any big changes, and is there anything that you really wanted to fit in that had to get left on the cutting room floor?
Yeah, I did a lot of edits with this book. I always say that like my first book was like me learning how to write a book, and this book was like me learning how to write a book like for publication, which is like very different. So like I wrote it, I did an edit with the mentorship program, my agent and I did a revision together, and then when my editor bought it, we did a huge revision that was like a pretty big rewrite. And at the time I was like, how much more? I feel like I've rewritten this book like so many times for like 2 years straight. Like how many more times? Like how many more things can I change? But I think about like the book I went on submission with versus like this book, and I'm like, I can't imagine if like that was like the published version. Like she was so right. Like editors sometimes have points, I guess. Yeah, we rewrote a bunch of stuff, and like because of that, I feel like most of the stuff that was cut like would not make sense in the current version of the story. There were a few. There was one scene where like Ava and Clara just got to like go shopping and try on clothes and like be girlfriends, and I was like,
Did you delete an 80s movie montage?
Kind of a little bit, because she was like, it doesn't serve the plot, and I was like, you're right, but it serves me personally. So I think about that sometimes. Oh my god, no, there was one scene actually that was like my very favorite scene that didn't make it even to submission because my agent was like, no. Where there was this like guy in the crew that Shane wanted to kill, so he like strapped a bunch of bombs to him and was like, go explode. And in my mind, I was like, that's fun. That's really exciting. And my agent was like, so I love the energy, but like, if you're gonna like blow someone up, it kind of has to be for the plot. Yeah, I know. Right? She was like, can we like kill him in a way that's like relevant to the plot? And I was like, okay, fine. So yeah, the bomb scene no longer exists. R.I.P. Sometimes I'm like, what was going on in like 2019 Jenna's brain where I was like, this is a scene that I want to publish in a book for everyone to read. Is like this man blowing up. But like, I miss him. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked a little about musical theater.
Yeah,
I know you are a big musical theater fan. You were a theater kid.
Yeah.
How did your love of theater influence your writing? Do you think that your writing, because I think your writing definitely has a cinematic quality to it,
Thank you.
and a theatrical quality to it, and I feel the acts in the writing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess I already talked about Hades from the musical. I think that like watching a good show gives me the same feeling as like reading a good book, where it feels really immersive and you feel like for however long of time you're like very invested in those characters. And I think musical theater specifically is very good at like moving the story along. Like each song and each scene has to serve a purpose, a very specific purpose. If it's a good, well done show, like you don't get to the end of it like and feel like there was anything like wasted or like a skippable song. And I do feel like that's something I really try to replicate is like each scene or each conversation, even if it's like for fun character development, does have to like serve a purpose in like creating a greater character arc or like pushing the story forward or something like that.
I think about like Ava's video diary, which is not like a huge spoiler,
Yeah.
but like, that almost to me feels like an I Want song.
Like a vlog.
Yeah. Like it's like
Yeah.
her being like, I'm laying it out, I'm talking to the audience
Yes.
right now, like here's what I feel and what I want.
She would love that. She would love a solo.
Yeah. Give her a solo.
She's on stage.
So what other pieces of media do you feel like Made of Stars is in conversation with? I know you're a massive Swiftie, and I feel that kind of like level of melodrama in it.
Yeah.
All these characters are mirrorballs.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing about a space opera is this book can also be like a western. It has the pacing and the feel almost of a spaghetti western, which I really love.
Yeah.
What other pieces of media do you feel inspired by? Like it's a conversation with.
I feel like obviously the Illuminae trilogy I think was one of the very first like sci-fi space opera YA books that I read. And those I think have a lot of really important themes that I remember of like honor and like duty and loyalty in like a big military space organization and like standing up to authority in space. I think it definitely does have some Six of Crows vibes. Like I read about Kaz ripping out that guy's eye for an edge and was like, that is romance. Like that is peak romance.
I want what they have.
Yeah, you can't get any better than that. So like definitely, I read that at a very formative point in my life. So absolutely. I think it has a little bit of like these Violet Delights with like the star-crossed lovers. Definitely Star Wars Rogue One. Absolutely.
That I was waiting for you to bring up Star Wars Rogue One.
Yeah, I also feel like I saw that at a really formative time in my life.
Yeah.
And I literally remember walking out of the theater like silently weeping, being like, I didn't know you could do that. Like, it was like terrifying. Also Andor. Andor wasn't out when I was writing this book, but I feel like it's a good companion.
Yeah.
Obviously she's in her Reputation era.
Yes.
Getaway Car. Yeah, Mirabelle characters. But I do think that like everything I write has like an Archer character though. Unfortunately it is Shane. He is the Archer character. Yeah.
That's a great answer. Made of Stars is, as we've heard, a standalone. The readers are clamoring for a sequel. I picked at Jenna's Goodreads yesterday as I was writing these questions to be like, oh, like, is there anything like that readers are talking about? Every single review was like, and a sequel, and I was like, they're not at the end. I think that speaks to the world and the other characters you've created.
Yeah, if they want to like slip a $20 bill to Daddy Penguin, like that's not on me.
Don't tell Goodreads. Yeah. Cool. That is. Anyway, so what is next for you? Is my question.
Yeah, that's really throwing things on the table.
It's probably like a bill.
Yeah,
I'll grab it.
It's not important.
Yeah.
My second YA is coming out next spring.
Woo! Can you pre-order it?
Not yet.
Okay, but you will eventually be able to pre-order
Yeah, you
it.
can add it on Goodreads. It's called Every Time You Hear That Song. It's a contemporary, so it's a little bit different. And it's like a dual POV, dual timeline about a girl whose favorite singer dies and leaves behind a time capsule that's supposed to contain this new album of songs, but when they open the album at the funeral, it is empty. So she has to go on this cross-country quest to find the music. But it's like dual POV between her and the singer.
It's the Dolly Parton road trip.
It's the Dolly Parton road trip of my dreams.
Dual POV.
I like can't call it Dolly Parton book anymore because like the character is like kind of terrible, and I was like, Dolly doesn't deserve that.
Dolly would never.
Dolly would literally never. It's
Evelyn Hugo is a country singer.
That's actually so true.
Yeah.
That's a better pitch. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, that covers off my serious artsy questions, and now I have some rapid fire
Oh my
for
God.
you.
Okay.
Okay. So the first one: Gaslight, Gatekeep, Girl Boss, Shane, Ava, Cyrus. Who is who?
Ava is girl boss, obviously.
Yes.
Shane is gaslight, and
Yeah.
Cyrus is gatekeep.
That feels weird.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Is now a good time for you to reveal where you got Shane's name?
Oh, yeah. Somebody asked me in a podcast I did if I named him after a character in A Walk to Remember, because apparently there's like character parallels, and I was like, no, I literally named him after Joe Jonas's character in Camp Rock. I was watching Camp Rock that week, and I needed a name.
It's a really good movie.
It's a good movie. So is the sequel.
She's
really
good.
Yeah.
That's
so,
gonna be the stars.
yeah. Maybe Joe Jonas should blurb.
Oh my
I
god.
didn't even think about that.
Joe!
Missed opportunity.
He made us in New York.
That's
now.
so true.
He's like the king of Kip Space.
I love
around.
him.
Yeah. Okay, so we are both famously Swifties.
Yeah.
Which Taylor Swift era is each of your main characters?
Okay. Ava's in her Reputation era,
Yes.
obviously.
Yep.
She is, fishnets, red lips, snake jewelry, burying hatches, keeping maps of where she puts them.
Yes.
100%. Shane is in his lover era, but if you
Aw.
ask him about being in his lover era, he will kill you. No, he's like the Death by a Thousand Cuts lover era, where it's like really a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Cyrus feels like he'd be like red.
Yeah.
Yeah, like classic Taylor.
He's like unpacking some stuff.
He's unpacking some stuff,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
For sure. Cornelia is like a speak now girly, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like acoustic guitars. Ooh. I feel like Lark is also in his Reputation era, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like in a different world, though, like he and Ava would actually be really good friends, so I think that would work out.
I like that. Okay, where would you take Shane and Ava on a day in DC?
Oh my god. I think they'd be really terrible travel companions, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I think, okay, Ava's doing like an Instagram tour of DC. She doesn't actually want to go to anything, but she wants to like take pictures in front of things, which is relatable. I get it. So
She's like outside the Call Your Mother in Georgia.
yes, exactly. She like goes there specifically, does not want to eat anything.
Yeah.
Or like outside the Supreme Court, she goes to like Old Town Alexandria, like or the wharf or something.
Yeah.
just to, like,
Oh,
take
she's going to
pictures.
the wharf.
Yeah. Shane like wouldn't want to go anywhere. I think he'd want to stay in his hotel room. But if he would go, I think he would just like sit on like a bus tour and just like.
I'm picturing
Yeah.
Shane grumpy in a bike helmet, and one of those like
On a
yellow
Segway?
vests on a Segway
Yeah.
tour.
Yeah.
The maddest anyone has ever been.
Yeah, like he would be an Instagram boyfriend if he had to be,
Yeah.
but he like certainly doesn't want to do it.
Okay, so you have to go on a double date with either Shane and Ava or Lark and Cyrus. Who are you picking and where are you going?
I feel like I want to choose Cyrus and Lark because I think I could get drama because I think they're still in their like will they won't they era.
Yeah,
And so there's gonna be a
No,
lot
that's
of
like a
tea.
chunky juicy.
Yeah, I feel like I would
Yeah.
just sit there and like have a really good time. Maybe I would take them somewhere really basic, like Le Dip. Like we could go there.
Oh my god, yes.
Or we like go to Wonderland.
Oh my god. You start at like W end of
Yeah. I like give them a really bad DC tour.
Yeah.
Or like just go to like Georgetown Cupcakes, put them in a booth and like sit across from them.
Oh, just see what happens.
Just see what happens. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, perfect. Okay, and then my final rapid fire question, and then we can go to audience questions. So if you have any. We are in the Hunger Games Renaissance.
We are.
Famously.
Yeah.
Which of your characters is making it the furthest in the Hunger Games, and who's starting first?
That's a great question.
Actually,
I
they all
actually-
do pretty well.
I think that'll do really well.
Yeah.
I actually think that Jared would win, unfortunately.
Okay.
Because like he's gonna accidentally like electrocute everyone and like blow everyone up.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so sorry I didn't mean to.
I do feel bad about it.
Yeah, like I think he would win. Oh my gosh, I don't know who would die first. I think that honestly Cyrus would die first because he would be like, I don't know what's going on and this is really terrible.
Or he'd like try to follow the rules.
yeah,
somehow,
and you get away
it
with like
just
no
didn't make
rules in
sense.
the Hunger Games.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, well that's it for my questions. I would love some audience questions. Yeah.
This is my favorite silly question that I always ask at book signings.
Love a silly
You had to
question.
deal with it. You had to deal with it last time. Who would your characters made in Mario Kart or Super Smash Bros?
Such a good
Oh
question.
my god. Well, Ava would be Peach, obviously. I think that Shane would probably try to be Bowser because, like in real life, he's like a little tiny like Chihuahua man. But so he'd want to be like a large.
Yeah.
Cyrus would be really basic. He'd be like Mario, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, that's like basically my knowledge of Mario.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's all you need.
Okay. You got the hints.
I'm so sorry.
Other than Bonnie and Clyde, which musicals would your characters be or star in?
Ooh, I love this question.
That's a really good question.
Ava would be like Legally Blonde or like Six or something that's like pop heavy.
I was thinking 6.
Yeah.
So good.
Or like Anne and Juliet. She would
Yeah.
love that. Shane would be something like super basic, like Phantom of the Opera, because I think he doesn't really love music. I feel like Cyrus would be really into like Spring Awakening or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Cornelia, I think, is also like a pop girly, so she would also love like Six or
Like Heather.
like Heather. Oh yeah, she might like really like Heather.
Yeah.
That's like alt. Yeah, for sure.
Great questions.
Yeah.
So it's not as much of a question as a comment, but now that I know that it's a Bonnie and Clyde retelling, I am baffled by the fact that Kirkus didn't know it was going to be violent and was shocked by it. I was I think about that every day.
I don't even think it's that violent. Like sometimes I think about your book and I'm like, this is like.
So,
This is
for
for children.
context, Kirkus is like a trade publication that writes reviews about books, and usually they're like, they're fun. They like really were so mean about Jenna's book, but in a way I've never seen for review. But the complaint was like so much violence and in space, and you're like, yeah, no, that's the bitch.
It was extremely.
Oh yeah. There's like a log line. My log line though for my video just said simply intriguing period.
Yeah.
I also have a question mark.
Yeah.
Intriguing. But yeah, this was excessively violent.
It was just extremely violent. I was like, all right.
I just sent my coworkers
I'll
to buy
take
it by showing that.
I was gonna say that's a
Thank you.
That's all be honest.
They did their job poorly that I.
But then you made a very, very like,
Failed
funny.
successfully.
You took it in stride and you made a very funny post.
Yeah.
It was like Kirkus hated my book, but you might not.
It's true.
It's a very good book. It's like a very well crafted book.
But I'm not to Kirkus.
Well, they didn't even have complaints about the craft. They had complaints about the
Yeah,
violence.
I want to know like what scene it was though, because I don't even think any of them were that bad.
Yeah, you didn't.
Was it like the finger cutting?
You edited out the bomb fest.
I had the bomb guy. The bomb. What would they have said to him?
What would it
Oh
have
my god.
Now I want to know if we had the same reviewer.
Oh my god. You're
I
right.
think
Did
that
you
would
get an
be
extremely
so
violent
funny.
review too?
Oh my
The
gosh.
thing is, they really liked my book.
Well,
Thing. So I'm like, is it
is the same person?
Yeah, the same person.
Probably
I have questions.
Well,
but
yeah.
yes.
I have questions about who does what at a lot of places.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my gosh.
It did sound nice.
So,
Yeah,
thank you. Thank
You
you.
got
Any other additional last minute questions?
Okay, if your main characters were in high school cliques, what would they be?
My AU. Okay, well, it was obviously in the drama club. Like, she is on stage. She's doing her solos. I feel like Shane would be he's not like a skater, but he's one of the guys that like hangs out. He's like Jughead Jones, I feel like. I'm
I'm a weirdo.
I'm a weirdo, but like completely, like he means it. Like
Yeah.
he thinks that he's like unlike anyone else. I could see Cyrus like being in marching band because there's a lot of rules. You have
Yeah.
to step a
Or is he like an ROTC kid?
Ooh.
Is that too far?
I think ROTC kids like don't necessarily have to do that. Like they
Yeah.
choose to.
Yeah.
If he had a choice, I don't think he would. Jared is definitely like AV club, like something like that. Cornelia is probably like an artsy girly. Yeah, for sure. Are you gonna write the AU for me?
I'm gonna write some fanfic right now.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
Our kids are around later tonight. Everybody check it.
This is not a plant question.
Coming from someone. Who are you?
I have no idea how writing works. I'll be the first to admit that. So my question is, when you wrote this book, did you put a little bit of yourself in every character, or did you channel a lot of your experiences or your like knowledge of other people into one specific character?
Raya's asking this because
I am not. That is not why I'm asking this.
Okay, let me get there. I don't think that like
Which character is Mariah?
I'm not necessarily.
And who was your beautiful roommate?
Yeah. Wow, who's like your favorite roommate? I'm not necessarily like doing space crime, so I don't know if I'm like I am these characters. I think that like when you do write, there are aspects of yourself you put into like every character. Like I definitely feel like a connection to our silly little Archer character that makes sense. Like sometimes you feel like anxious about like love and anxiety and stuff like that. But I feel like with this one in particular, I was just like writing to have a good time, and if I did base any characters off of anyone, it was off of some specific people in my life. And I told Mariah at one point that there is a character in Made of Stars who gets injured and insists that he is not injured and insists that he can go places and continue to work. And I was like, oh my God, it's like that time that Mariah broke her foot and then continued to live her life as if she hadn't broken her foot. But then every single day she'd be like, yeah, so you know my foot's broken. And she would have to remind you that she was in a cast every single day. So if you want to read into that and figure out which character Mariah is, you're more than welcome.
conversation with another author recently about how, like, no matter how hard you try, the protagonist of your first book always ends up being you. And it's funny because I actually do think you avoided that. Like, I believe you when you say that because I read this book and I know you.
I do feel like there's like a element of like I did want to be like super famous as a child, and like I did keep a really detailed personal diary because I thought it was going to be used to like solve a crime or like be like my personal memoir when I was super famous. Like, I get that. I know, right? I was like, I am writing this for future scholars for when I am famous. So like I get that. There's like a few little elements, but yeah, I think you're right. I don't think any of them are like super me.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's give Jenna a giant round of applause.
For the evening, and y'all can get all your books signed, buy them if you haven't bought them yet. If you do have Made of Stars, can you go ahead and hold that up for me?
Yeah.
And then if you guys want to sign away your cards, so I can get you in it.
Oh gosh.
If you want.
Oh yeah, I brought it.
You want to sit?
Should we sit right here?
Yeah.
In our audience?
Your audience.
One with the Polaroid and then one with the phone. Okay. Woo, wonderful. 3 seconds. Keep it up. Perfect. You guys are the best audience. Oh my goodness. One this way. Okay, now I'm done. Oh my goodness. One more round of applause.
I brought this book for you all to sign like it's a yearbook. So if you want to do that, please do. It's cupcakes. Oh, there's also cupcakes in the back. I remember that.
And when everyone's ready to stand up, could you go ahead and fold up your chairs and lean them against something that is not a person? That would be easier for us.
They are not poisoned.
Oh, you have to literally run to an airplane. That's not true.
Bring it, Joseph. Joseph. Oh, yes, it's the other one. Oh, okay. Oh my God. Okay. I'm not crazy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, wait.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
That's true. It was say you know where to get more, right? That's so like already slide. Oh my God, that's so fun. That's a good idea.
Everything has a spot later. It's messed up.
Yeah, it's like going out. Yeah. I know, and we're talking about things going on before we never so like a little cafe. Yeah, so that's a month ago for a while, but like looking in the spring of fall.
Yes, please do.
Of course, I know. But I did audition for SAG like
People like, how do you manage it? I was like, my job is really easy.
yeah, Mark, I have a book coming out like we have a core publishing team of like, what are you doing now? No, tell me about it.
Don't worry about it.
I haven't washed my hair.
Do you want me to edit or something? Whatever you want.
There we go.
I saw you.
Thank you for putting up signs and still Mario for questions.
No, thank you.
I love the question.
I asked you that. Everybody's in your book about it. It's like, so skinny. Mario for answers.
Thank you for coming.
Let's go feed our cat.
Let me find my keys. Hold on.
You hold my bag. I'll put my jacket back on.
I need to find it myself. Oh.
I love all the little gaze in space.
I put my wallet so high.
To be said, like that picture of Henry Fire. Yay, that's expanding! You know what I'm talking about? Yes. In the vein of that picture of Henry Fire, I'm going, yay!
And then, whereas MTV, obviously everyone literally goes to so that's just like our
Oh, so kind of you.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, never let me.
Oh,